Oh, you're live. Hmm. Ready. ഇല്ലില്ല നമ്മൾ സ്റ്റാർട്ട് ചെയ്യുന്നു. ഇപ്പോൾ സാറേ ഞാൻ ഓഡിബിൾ ആണോ നോക്കിയേ? ഓഡിബിൾ ആണോ? ചെക്ക് ചെക്ക്. രണ്ടുപേരെന്നുള്ളത് നമ്മൾ തന്നെയാണോ? സ്റ്റാർട്ട്. ഓ, അവർക്ക് വേറൊരു ബ്രോഡ്കാസ്റ്റിംഗ് ചാനൽ ഉണ്ടെന്ന് സാറുമാരെ അതിൽ ലോഗിൻ ചെയ്യണ അവർക്ക് കാണാമെന്ന്. ഇതിൽ ലോഗിൻ ചെയ്തിട്ടില്ല, അവർക്ക് അതിൽ കാണാമെന്ന്. അതിൽ ഓൾറെഡി സൗണ്ട് ഓക്കെ അല്ലേ? എന്ന് നോക്കി സാറേ, സൗണ്ട് ഓക്കെ അല്ലേ? മൈക്ക് ഓണോ? ക്യാമറ. A very good morning to all, and welcome to this particular session, which actually gives me an immense pleasure to stand before you to speak on a very vibrant topic related to the Kerala demographic front as such. So before getting into what I mean by this particular topic and all, it gives me immense pleasure to address this particular topic today in front of a very enriching panel or enriching audience as such. So first and foremost, I would like to thank Maharajas College and the IQSC cell of Maharajas College for giving me such a great opportunity to present this particular topic. I would like to extend my gratitude to my research guide, Dr. Sunil Kumar S. Menon, Head, Department of Economics, Maharajas College, all my co-research scholars who constantly worked with me, in the streamline where we actually go hand in hand by exchanging ideas, thoughts, and all. And a special thanks to Department of Economics of Maharajas College for all the support and guidance rendered to me. All right, so straight to the topic. So today, I'll be dealing with the topic that is Census Report 2011 Insights for Kerala. Now, Census Report 2011 Insights for Kerala. When we come across this particular topic, this is kind of, a very vast or topics or which the details which actually includes a lot of things. So for the time being, I have constrained, or I have restricted my presentation to the following subtopics as such. So Census Report 2011, I'll be starting with the demographic profile of India as such in a very brief manner. Then slowly I'll come back, or I'll come to the Kerala demographic front or demographic profile as such. and I'll be specifically focusing on the population growth, density of population, literacy rate, sex ratio, and child sex ratio. So these are the indicators, or these are the parameters which we're going to deal with when we discuss the demographic front or demographic area of Kerala, particularly in this particular session. All right. So as we all know, when the whole concept of census began in India in the year 1872, it actually made an attempt to capture the socio-economic, demographic, and cultural diversity of this particular country. And the whole idea behind the census was to quantify the socio-economic and demographic diversity of this particular country. So census 2011 was conducted in two phases. The first phase was house listing and housing census. The second phase was the population enumeration. All right. And now, when you look into the statistic or the data of census 2011, I would like to start from a brief data from the Indian context as such. I mean, in a pan-India context as such. So when you talk about the demographic statistics of India, according to 2011, the official census data, the population of India is 121 crores, where it actually includes so much of male and so much of female. Now, in such a country where the land area is there, I mean, it's okay. I mean, the land area, I'm not saying like land area is not that great as such when you compare that with the Soviet Union, the old Soviet Union, or the Canada or something like that. But still, we are okay with to accommodate the population as such. But as we always mention, the resources are limited and the needs or the wants are unlimited. But when you talk about the literacy rate, which is one of the most important indicator of the demographic trend, the literacy rate of India is 74.04, in which when you compare that with Kerala stands in the top in the list of the literacy rates among the states, which with a percentage of 94, which means that 94% of Kerala population is literate. All right. Then when you talk about density of population, it is 382 per square kilometer, which is like a kind of thickly dense, we must say that, because the population rate or the population growth is something like that. And when you come into the very important indicator of your population, which is called as your sex ratio, it is 940 female per 1,000 males. That means 940 for 1,000 males. And again, when you come that particular indicator, when you come to Kerala, when you speak about the sex ratio, again, Kerala tops in the list. When it comes to sex ratio, it is 1,084. All right. But unfortunately, but when it comes to, child sex ratio, it is just 914. That means 914 females per 1,000 males. There actually lies the importance where the, what happens or what's going to happen in the next coming generations. Because when you talk about this child sex ratio, the number of females in that given population, I mean, as we all know, when it comes to child sex ratio, we actually takes into account the age group of 0 to 6. So when you take into account the age group of 0 to 6, when the number of female births or the number of births of females is decreasing, which means that it will have its own greater implications in the future generations. But even from the pre-independence era, when the whole process of census started in India during the British era, they could actually, figure it out, like the number of female in the total population itself was on a declining mode. When you examine the very start of your census data itself, I mean, from 1901 or 1921, then when you closely examine all those data, we could actually find that, the birth or the proportion of female in the population is on a declining or is on a decreasing mode. So that is the one point, according to me, where we actually put a lot of effort, and we need to examine what is the exact reasons behind it. Because when you talk about the child sex ratio, the most alarming or the most disturbing figures are coming from the most economically well performing states, which means that, for example, the most alarming situations when you compare, when you take into account the child sex ratio, the most alarming situations is happening in the northern side. For example, states like Punjab, Gujarat, Haryana, Rajasthan, Gujarat, all these states are performing well economically. I mean, in the economic front, they are performing well. When you take into account their PCI, per capita income, or GDP contribution and all those things, they are performing well. But when they come to the demographic front, they are not performing well. We could actually, when you examine or when you go through the 2011 census data, the figures are really disturbing us, like what's happening with the female population over there. All right. So I would like to concentrate more on or I would like to draw your attention to the Amartya Sen's missing women concept over there, like where these women are going, like where is this female proportion of this population is going. So that's where I think we must, being a researcher, we must give a somewhat concentration or on these particular topic, like what's happening with this particular areas as such. So again, we'll be dealing with the sex ratio and child sex ratio in the Kerala sector as such. So this is just a brief introduction about what's happening or what is the current statistics of Indian population according to the 2011 census. Now, coming to the Kerala sector as such, or coming to the Kerala state as such. So when you talk about the demographic front of Kerala, the demographic achievements or the demographic parameters has been internationally acclaimed, because when you talk about Kerala, we have so-called Kerala model of development, which was popularly, discussed by many eminent economists. So when you talk about the Kerala model of development, it basically stresses, or it more stress or the more importance were given to the demographic front as such, or not just demographic front, the social sector as such, because more than the economic performance, when you take into account a state like Kerala, we were performing well in social sector. For example, your education sector, your health. The best example is the COVID. The way in which the Kerala government has handled the COVID in the initial stage, or even now itself, like the kind of the spread, as well as the kind of health facilities that they are providing, and as well as the way in which they have managed the spread of Nipah virus. So that actually gives an a more edge to the social sector of Kerala. So when you talk about the social sector of Kerala, it actually implies your education sector, your health sector, and all those things. So when you invest more on social sector, automatically the demographic front or the demographic areas of that particular state improves. So the Kerala population, as per 2011 census, it is 3.34 crores, and wherein which it has been increased from 3.18 crores in 2001 census. So in 2001, it was 3.18, and it has been improved to 3.34. And the total population is given in the numerical order in the second point as such. Now let's see what are the total population scenario as such. So when you talk about the total population scenario as such, like we can see that the proportion of male as well as a female in the total population. So what happening, or what is the status of the male and female proportion in the total population? It has been shown in the figure like 2001 statistics in comparison with 2011 statistics. The proportion has increased in both male and female. Again, the female proportion has been increased. So there were the important likes, where in the 2001 statistics, again, when you compare the 2001 and 2011 statistics, the female proportion is more. But when you compare to the child sex ratio, the figures are a bit disturbing. So there lies the interesting part, like what's happening with the current ongoing scenarios in the demographic front as such. Now, when you compare the districts, as we all know, we have 14 districts, and Malappuram is the most populated district, and followed by Trivandrum and Ernakulam. So the most, it's not like thickly populated when it is in the absolute terms. It's not in the terms of density. It is in the terms of absolute number of population. So when you talk about the total number of population, it is Malappuram, then Trivandrum, and then Ernakulam. And when you take into account the least populated district, it is Wayanad, Idukki, and Kasaragod. Now, what about the population growth of this particular state of Kerala? The percentage decadal growth of Kerala population during 2001-2011 was 4.9%, which is lowest among Indian states. That is a very important factor. That means even though we are performing well in the demographic front, the decadal growth, all right, so the decadal growth of population was just 4.9%. And among the districts, Malappuram has shown the highest growth rate. We know the difference. We know the situations over there in the Malappuram, the religious dominations that they have, the cultural diffusions, the diversity, the cultural diversity over there. So the growth rate in Malappuram is 13.4%. All right, 13.4%. And Pathanamthitta has the lowest growth rate, which is minus 3%. So when you compare these two districts, Pathanamthitta and Malappuram, we know the situations over there, because in the case of Pathanamthitta, the old age population, all right, and when you talk about that particular district, the aged population is much higher when you compare with Malappuram as such, because our Pathanamthitta, we know that most of the people, like when they are like in the teenage, or if they are well educated, most of them are like settled in abroad India, in majorly in European countries as such. So which means that over there the demographic changes that's happening is like very very fluctuating as such, because many studies has concentrated on that particular state, what's really happening with Pathanamthitta as such. And then when you talk about the decline in population growth rate, again I would like to draw your attention to another particular district, which is known as Idukki. So Idukki again records a negative growth rate of minus 1.8%. So the population growth is lower in 6 southern districts. That means down from Idukki, Kottayam, Alappuzha, Kollam, Pathanamthitta, and Trivandrum. So we could see that I don't want to put it as like paradox, but we could see that difference, like what's happening within the state. Even though in the demographic front, in an aggregate purview, we are performing well, but there are districts where there are statistics, where there are data which we actually, when you see that data, it's a bit disturbing for us, like what's really happening over there. All right, so that's about just a population growth rates of that particular districts as such. Now, coming to the child population, I'm not concentrating over here on the child sex ratio, just as child population. So Kerala's child population, that means when you talk about child population, it is 0 to 6 years. It was in 2011, all right, it is 10%, 10.3% of total population, which means that out of 3.34 crores of population in the state, in Kerala, only 10% comprises of this child population, where it was actually 11.9 in 2001 census. There actually lies the importance of this particular statistics. In the year 2001, it was 11.9%, and when it comes to 2011 census, it has been dropped to 10.3%. So there was a drastic change, or there was a drastic decline in the child population when you compare these two censuses. So what's happening there actually draws attention. These figures actually draws our attention, what's happening to the child population, what's happening to the child sex ratio in this particular state, even though we are performing well in the sex ratio. When we are performing, on the one side, we are performing well for sex ratio. On the other hand, we are not that good enough when it comes to the child sex ratio. Now, see, this is a graph which actually explains the child population in our state Kerala. It is just a comparative study of 2001 data and 2011 data. As you can see the fluctuations, as you can see the points where the Malappuram, as well as I would like to put it as like Malappuram only. So Malappuram is actually contributing a large chunk into the child population as such, where as you can see in the graph, after Malappuram, I mean, till Malappuram, it's like kind of fine, but after Malappuram, when it comes to Palakkad, Thrissur, Ernakulam, Idukki, especially when it comes to Pathanamthitta, the child population is declining. So we can actually, we have to think on those, what happening to those districts, what happening to the southern districts when it comes to the child population, or when it comes to child sex ratio, what's happening to that particular districts. Because as we know, the districts, the cultural, as well as all these things, I mean, the religious as well as the cultural things are different. But in a state where we are well performing on the demographic front, when we are well performing in the child sex ratio, in the sex ratio, but what's happening with the child sex ratio? All right. And now coming to the next important parameter, which is your literacy rate. So literacy rate, Kerala has the highest effective literacy rate of 94%, which is the top among the Indian states. And it was 90% in 2001. So in the 2001, it was 90%, and in 2011 census, it is 94%, which means that the investment of Kerala government on the education sector, or the investment of Kerala government on the social sector itself shows the improves, or itself shows the importance of these kind of improvements in the demographic front. All right. So as I already mentioned, when you talk about the demographic aspects demographic aspects of our state, this particular factors, I mean, these kind of social investment by the government matters a lot. And in Kerala, when you talk about the male female proportion, 96.2% of men and 91.98% of women are literate, which means that over there itself you can find the difference between the literacy rate in men and women. What's happening with the literacy rate of men and women? Even though we acclaim, or we always think like we are the best state, we are the very educated. I don't want to put it as like education, because the whole concept of education is totally different from the whole concept of literacy. Even though we believe that we are God's own country, we have that equality feeling in our minds, but still what's happening with these values, or what happening with the difference in these? Because only 91% of women are literate. So literacy, what in my opinion, literacy is nothing but it is the ability to just to read, and at least read and write your name, to put a signature. That's what the whole concept of literacy, according to, it's just my explanation. I'm saying like the whole concept is nothing but to read and write your name at least. So what's happening to these figures? What is a discrepancy? What that's happening with the literacy rate when you compare to the gender, or when you compare with the male as well as female? And among districts, even from the past history of Kerala onwards, Kottayam tops in the list of the literacy with 97.2%, followed by Pathanamthitta. And lowest literacy is in Wayanad and Palakkad with 89% and 89.3%. respectively. But the interesting fact is that even though Wayanad has the lowest literacy rate of 89%, but it is much, much above than the national average. So that's where I would like to put like what is the importance of the Kerala model of development as such. Like when we talk about Kerala model of development and all, like when you pump funds into the social sector as such, these things or these kind of magics happens. So because when you're concentrating more on the welfare of the society, when you pump more into your social sector, automatically your standard of living, your quality of life increases. Literacy rate is one among the human, the quality of life index as such. So that's about the literacy rate. This is just a comparison of your literacy rate of 2001 and 2011 according to 2011 census report. And it's a two-panel. I would like to put it as like a two-panel diagram. On the first panel, you can see the absolute numbers, whereas in the second panel, you can see the percentage-wise. So when you compare it as in the total figures, as you can see in 2011, the 94%, out of which what are the male percentage and female percentage? Male 96 we have discussed, and female we have discussed it as 92%. But when you segregate again that into rural and urban, all right, so literacy rate in rural and urban sector as such, as you can see in 2011, the rural literacy rate is 92% and urban is 95%. So which means that your magics or the improvements are happening in the literacy front of this particular state as such. We can actually conclude these things from this particular figures as such, how best the social sector is performing in our state as such. All right. Now coming to the another important parameter, which is your sex ratio. So as we all know, sex ratio is nothing but the number of female population per 1,000 male. The sex ratio in Kerala, according to 2011 census, is 1,084, which has been improved by 26 points since 2001. So When you compare the 2001 census, it has been improved by 26 point, and now the sex ratio is 1084, which means that for 1000 men or for 1000 male, there is 1084 female in Kerala. That's I would like to put, or I would like to draw your attention on this particular side, because when it comes to sex ratio, we are performing well, because Kerala is one and only state where the sex ratio is historically above unity. All right. Now, another important significant feature of the state, that all districts in Kerala has a positive sex ratio. All district, every district in the, the 14 districts across this particular state have always shown a positive, not always, according to 2011 census has shown the positive sex ratio. And among the districts, Kannur has the highest sex ratio with 1136, and followed by Pathanamthitta, and Idukki has the lowest, that is 1006. But when you compare that with the other states as such, because we are in a position where we can actually compare the district-wise sex ratio with the state-wise sex ratio. I mean, we can compare our district sex ratio with the other state sex ratio, because we are like performing well. All right, the social sector as well as the health sector is like really performing well with respect or with regard to the sex ratio. So sex ratio part, we are performing well. All the districts are showing a positive side. Now, but when you come into the child sex ratio is nothing but the number of female per 1000 male for an age group of 0 to 6. But when we compare that, or when we compare that with the states, or when we compare the child sex ratio of our country, child sex ratio of state with that with when you compare the child sex ratio of Kerala with the sex ratio of Kerala, there actually invites the alarming or the disturbing, not alarming, the disturbing figures, because the Kerala's child sex ratio is just 964 as per 2011 census, and it was 960 in 2001. So there was a slight, a marginal increment has happened when you compare with 2001 and 2011 census. And among districts, Pathanamthitta has the highest child sex ratio, followed by Kollam and Kannur. And among the district, Thrissur has shown the lowest sex ratio, that is 950. All right, and Alappuzha is just above that, 951. So among the 14 districts in Kerala, Thrissur has shown the lowest or the least sex rate, not least, the lowest sex ratio, which is a 950 per 1000 males as such. So there actually lies the importance of like what's happening with these particular districts, where when you compare the sex ratio parameter, they are performing well. The sex ratio is like performing well, or those data are like pretty good. But when you compare to that with the child sex ratio, we are actually need to examine like what is the reasons behind that. So these are the sex ratio of it's a comparison between sex ratio and child sex ratio of particular in our state as such, like what's happening with our state. So in the first panel, I would like to put it as like 2-panel diagram. The first panel shows the sex ratio, the second panel shows the child sex ratio. That means child sex ratio includes the age group of 0 to 6 years. All right, this actually shows the absolute figures, what's happening with the sex ratio as well as child sex ratio front of the demographic area. And as you can see in the sex ratio, in 2001 it was 960, then it has been slowly or slightly increased into 964, and again it has been divided into rural and urban. So in 2011 census, as you can examine, in the case of rural area it is 965, and in urban it is 963. All right, so we cannot say that even when you compare the rural and urban areas, your child sex ratio is not that performing well. But again, when you take into the consideration of sex ratio, it is performing well. I mean, when you compare the rural and urban, it is above 1000, which means that it is above unity. So that's where the paradox, or that was the dilemma actually arises. What's happening with, or what is the difference, or what's happening between the sex ratio and child sex ratio of that particular state, where we are performing well in the demographic and the social front as such. All right. Now moving on to the density. Density of Kerala population according to 2001 census is 860 person per square kilometer. It is much higher than India's one. India's is 382, and Ours is 860. And Trivandrum is the most densely populated district, and Idukki is the least densely populated district with 255. All right, so that's just a glance about the density of population. Just a figure like to absolute terms, like what exactly happening with the density, not just concentrating on it. So let me move on to the. I would like to sum up the presentation with certain projections. I don't want to put it as like a projections. These has been collected from many readings as well as from the many reports by the census as well as by the expert committees as such. So it is expected that the population of Kerala is tend to increase from 3.34 crores to 3.69 during the period of 2011 and 2036. So there can be a shift, or there can be a change in the instead of change, I would like to put it as like there can be an increase in population as such, and then automatically population increases, the density automatically increases. So it is projected that the density of population will increase from 860 to 951 person per square kilometer, and automatically when there is a drastic improvement happens in the health sector of Kerala, where we actually witnessed how best they have the health sector of Kerala handled the coronavirus or the pandemic outbreak as well as the Nipah virus outbreak. So we expect the infant mortality rate, the IMR of the country, is expected to be around 9 by 2031-35, which means that can be a drastic improvement in the health sector also. Again, the sex ratio of total population is expected to show a marginal decrease from 1084 to 1079. Again, we need to draw our attention on over here. Even though the IMR, the infant mortality rate, all those things are happening or all those things are improving, then again, it is projected that when it comes to the sex ratio, it can decrease. All right, it can decrease from 1084 to 1079 in the year 2036. So I would like to conclude with this particular statistic. I would like to put these statistic in front of you to think on it, like what is exactly about the Kerala demographic data as such, because when you compare the census, when you examine the census as such, there is a lot of statistics, there are a lot of parameters need to be examined, but due to the time constraint, and I would like to put it as like a very specific topic. That's why I have taken few parameters like total population, for then your sex ratio, child sex ratio, then density as such. So the alarming situation, I don't want to put it as like alarming situation, but I think the researchers like us need to draw a little more attention, like what's happening to these figures. Like we can actually expect a good figures in 2021 census, because the union ministry has already announced that the 2021 census is going to be an e-census. It's going to be completely electronically controlled census. So let's have a good figures. I don't want to just closely examine with the figures. Let's have a good indicators. Let's have a good improvement in all sectors, both economic as well as the social sector of the state as well as the country as such. All right. So with that, I conclude this particular presentation. And first and foremost, I would like to thank Maharajas College and IQSC cell of Maharajas College for giving me this opportunity once again. Thank you. Thanks a lot, Dr. Sunil Kumar S. Menon, my guide, my mentor, head Department of Economics, for guiding me, for constantly rendering his support, my co-research scholars, and Department of Economics, Maharajas College, for all the support and guidance. Thank you all.